I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Contrary to what you believe, there is not a $25 gift card for everybody for dinner afterwards.
All right, we're going to start us up here. We're going to get going. Hello, everybody. We are live on Facebook, and we have quite the crowd indoors here today. I don't think I've ever had this many people here, right?
Full house. Full house.
And we're gonna chat tonight about what's been biting recently. We missed last month, but we're gonna catch up a little bit on what the reports have been and answer questions I'm sure everybody has. We're gonna talk to Sam about fishing for tuna.
The rivers,
Blackfin.
we'll talk about the river. We'll talk about fishing for blackfin tuna. Talk about fishing for sailfish. You know, sailfish season's here on us right now. As soon as the ocean calms down enough where we can get out there and these,
Yep.
you know, anything less than a 50-footer, we'll be fishing for those. And what we really need is a little bit more live bait. Live bait's been hard to get now. You have to go way up north to get it, or you can find a lot of that small stuff in the river. I'm talking about 3-4 inches.
Well, the last few times I've been out, it's been tough.
Yeah. Yeah, but well, you know, we're still catching live bait, but it's small. It's good for snook, but since this cold weather's moved in, the snook is tough, man.
Yeah.
They don't like that cold water at all, and they don't like they like it bright and sunny and warm, just like the girls on the beach do. You know, where they can get a suntan. But
So
it's been
where do you
tough.
find them then?
The girls on the beach or the
No,
snook?
the snook when it's not bright and sunny out.
Well, my first choice is any kind of major structure, like bridge abutments, that kind of stuff, because
Deeper water?
they're going to be in deeper water and they're going to be in current. If you ain't got some current, you ain't got a tide incoming or outgoing, you're not going to do very well. And you got to fish. It's like this. This is incoming. This is dead tide. This is outgoing. And that's what you want to fish, these two areas, because it's going to be better on the incoming or the outgoing. And the dead tide is pretty tough. But, you know, I'm kind of singing the blues, and I didn't want to do that tonight. But what I want to say is right now is a prime opportunity to do something that you said, well, I'd love to go there and go fishing. I'd love to do this. I'd love to go to Lake Okeechobee and go crappie fishing. I'd love to go to Titusville and go redfish fishing. You know, if you think about it, we all are creatures of habit. And guides are the same way. But if you look at the fishing opportunities, if you drew a line straight across from the top of Lake Okeechobee, well, let's say Orlando. Let's say Orlando. All the way down to the Florida Keys. How many different fishing opportunities there are. So when it gets like this, what I think, what I love to do is take an opportunity to do something that you don't get to do all the time. You know what I'm saying? Y'all don't look at me so serious.
So, like,
You got to kind of encourage me a little bit.
how many people have a boat here? Wow,
Mm-hmm.
nice. Inshore, offshore, or both? You guys do bay boats?
Sure, they'll go take
Both. So, I mean, a bay boat, you can take to Lake Okeechobee. There's some lakes.
Sure you can.
know, the lakes up there. What is it? Blue,
Speck
what's
fishing
what's
free.
that?
Well, blue cypress, but blue cypress, you know, it gets a lot of pressure. I'd like to go. We got a great new lake called the Headwaters on over at Fellsmere, and we've also got East Apoka. We've got the Kissimmee River, St. Johns River. They just had a crappie tournament up at the St. Johns River, and I think the guys over a 2-day period had almost 25 pounds to win it, and that's weighing in 7 fish a day. So crappie fish is pretty good. But I'm just saying, don't say, well, fishing's no good. I'm gonna sit home and watch the ball games, drink beer, and aggravate my wife. I mean, if that's what you want to do, you can. But there's opportunities out there, and on the wet, don't get what I call fish depression. I know Mark Nichols and I were out one day this week, and we were fishing. We were actually fishing for grunts and sea trout, which is a lot like a speckled trout, except it doesn't have any specks on it. And we didn't catch any, and we were talking about, oh God, the river's no good anymore. The manatees are starving to death. Da 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 da. We're just in a lull right now. It's just a lull. It's a transition period. Now it doesn't have anything to do with blackfin tuna, but it's don't get depressed. And right now, you're not going to go out there anything much less than 27 to a 32-foot boat because it's too rough. So explore that. Florida is the greatest fishing state in the country. Explore some other alternatives. Now we're going to talk about blackfin tuna.
Well, I got out with a friend of mine. It was obviously it was not a terrible day. It was not a flat day, but it was beautiful. The weather was good, sunny. We didn't get our target species, which was first live bait, which was a tough thing, and then we ended up going to the tower, the Loran Tower, and fished the ledge and caught a couple mutton snapper, and played around with the kingfish and the bonitas. We really wanted to target the blackfin that day. We did find there were some reports of them that day. They were out there. And then since that was a little bit ago, a few weeks ago. But then since then, there's been a few days of mahi out there. So they are catching fish offshore if you're able to get out there. You just got to pick your day.
Did y'all go to the hill?
We didn't go because we didn't have live bait. We were going to go to that area and fish at Push Button Hill, but we didn't go at Falls.
Those people from all over the country come to Push Button Hill to catch up blackfin tuna. But the best, I think, fishing is on the south end of the hill, of Push Button Hill, and the east side of Push Button Hill, where the drops sharper. Where it drops off sharper.
Has everybody been out there? Everybody know where the Push Button Hill is? So you guys know when you see it on your chart, you can see the contours where he's talking about, where it's sharper on that. And you get the eddies from where the current hits it, where it's steeper.
I think it's 13 miles northeast of the inlet.
Yeah, it's out there. It's out there.
Push Button Hill?
It's southeast, isn't it?
Southeast. I mean, it ain't northeast.
inlet?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
St. Lucie
Akaluka
Inlet.
Bank.
Push button. Yeah.
That's Akaluka Bank, northeast.
Southeast?
It's
Sir?
southeast. It's southeast out of St. Lucie. It's on the chart. It's pretty easy.
A little bit
It's
south.
east and then a little south.
Sir?
I said it's mostly east, it's a little bit south.
Yeah, it's a little bit south, mostly east. You're right. I don't know how many degrees it would be, but I'm gonna say I'm not gonna put myself in that position. If you go 125 degrees out of the inlet, you'll probably hit it.
Well, there's been a lot of fishing inside of that too. In 120, 80 to 120 feet.
The kingfish are good if you can get out there. Kingfish are good. You just can't get out there. It's too rough.
And did you get out for the mackerel or no?
Excuse me. Yes, we went out. We got out for the mackerel. I had some real good days. And right at the beginning of February, Jerry and I went, and we didn't do any good. I think we caught one. We had to take it away from a porpoise stick.
No, it was the last day of snook season, December
Yeah,
20,
whatever we went out there. But they closed the feds closed Spanish mackerel season to commercial fishing.
Really?
Yeah. So it was good. You know, it was good, and those commercial guys weren't out there to tell you what you were doing wrong. They like to do that, you know. They like to do that.
Really?
This year.
So, and I tell them, you know, look, I've been here so many years, back and forth, back and forth. Just wears me out. Nothing talking, you know. But anyway,
What's your preferred bait for blackfin? You like live bait?
you know, I'm always been a live bait fisherman, but one thing that I want to mention about the blackfin tuna is a trolling lure. And I'm not saying you got to have a one of those big bill lures. I like those, but they're hard to fish because if you don't have that thing running, a lure that doesn't run straight will not catch fish unless they're real, real hungry. So what I've been doing, I've been taking like a storm bait, those big rubber 1 ounce and ounce and a half jigs, and I put a trolling weight about 6 feet in front of it to get it down, and I troll those baits like that, and it gets it down, and you can stagger the depths by different trolling weights. Everybody know what a trolling weight is? It's a long
Cigar weight?
yeah, it's a cigar weight.
Cylindrical.
Cylindrical with a swivel in both ends, and that way it won't twist your line. But I use when I'm using those, I put about 6 feet of 60-pound mono and about 18 inches to 2 feet of tieable steel leader. Any of y'all ever use that tieable steel leader? Hey, that stuff works. I know it's expensive and it's a pain, but you don't have to really tie any fancy knots. I use a figure 8 knot all the time on mine, and it won't come untied, and it really will. You know, that way if you get hit by a king or get hit by a wahoo or get something that's got teeth, you'll be able to get it in. Now a lot of the guys do not like using steel leader, but if you're buying your baits, if you're buying your lures, I'd suggest that you use steel leaders.
How deep are you trying to fish?
Well, that's according to what depth the water is. I like to, if I'm going to be trolling like that with the big boat, I like to get at least 60 feet deep, and that's just a experience. You know, fishing enough to know how far back to drop it and how big a lead to use. Then I also put some on top. Now, one great thing about blackfin tuna is the birds love them things. And if you're out there and you see a bunch of small terns, it doesn't have to be the big gannets and pelicans and all that stuff. If you see those small terns, the black and white terns with the sharp wings, and they'll be diving down, what they're trying to do, they're trying to pick up pieces of fish where those blackfin have tore that bait up. And that, I mean, I'll run to that all day. Anybody running radar on your boats? You got radar on your boat? Yeah, there's another radar. You know, and you don't have to have a real big boat to run radar. Everybody says, well, I don't, my boat's not big enough for radar. That's a bad conception. You know, and nowadays they've got radars that are compatible to your units. You know, if you're running, now I do like to run any bigger than a 10K. I like to run a 12K radar. You know, where you can dial the frequency back and forth. I mean, not the frequency, but the intensity. Dial it back and forth, and you can pick those birds up. Everybody follow me? But
That's
those
typically
birds,
an open array radar.
Well, open array's good, but a lot of people don't have room for open array. I don't mind
Dome.
a dome, but I do recommend that you have a sector block on it. That it's not where it won't be shooting back on you. You know, 'cause I don't know if it's kind of like a vaccine we were talking about a while ago. I don't really know if it'll hurt you or not. But it ain't gonna hurt me much, I can tell you that. But now, a young person, it might not be good for you. But those blackfin. But you say, well, you know, I don't have radar and I can't find the birds. Let me tell you something. A good pair of 10 by 42 binoculars is a real good tools. You know, and I deer hunt with a pair of 10 by 42s. I don't like them little bitty ones. Makes my head hurt. I like the big ones. So, yes, sir.
So what about, speed, trolling speed, and then, I'm always curious about direction, if you're just heading east, or if you're fighting the current going south, how fast you go fighting the current, at least surface over ground speed.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're heading north with the current, then what do you do?
It's more about how when you're traveling into the current, you know, it's about how you want your lure to run.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so you want that lure to perform the same way, whether you're going up current or down current. Right, so if you've got down current, you might have to run a little faster, otherwise it's going to sink down. And up current, you don't have to go as fast to keep that moving, or that action of the bait to look the same.
What I try to do is stay between 5 and 7 knots. 5 and 7 miles an hour. Now, faster I go, the shallower it's going to get. The baits are going to be running shallower. If the slower I go, they're going to sink down deeper. But if you're going with the current, you know, you may have to slow it down to get your lures down. And if you're going against the current, that's the hardest thing, going against the current, to try to judge that speed. So, because you've got not only the speed of the boat, but you got the speed of the current to run against too. So you have to really, you know, and depth is very important to those pelagic fish like that. And, you know, you got to really be careful about that. Now, one good thing about trolling for blackfin is there's a lot of other species you're going to hit. You know, you're going to hit maybe sailfish, you're going to hit maybe a wahoo, you know, that kind of stuff. And mahi, you're going to be able to hit, you know, you're going to see a lot of those. And yes, sir.
When you're doing that, are you marking anything on your graph?
Yes, sir.
Bait or individual marks?
I try to stay close to that drop. That's more or less what I'm looking for is depth. You know, I want to stay, because I'm going to tell you what happened. If this is a ledge right here, this is the top of the ledge, and we'll say this is 80 feet. Okay? This is 300 feet out here, 320, 300. A lot of times, those fish will pull back off that ledge and suspend the same depth that's the top of that ledge, but they'll be over that 300 feet of water. That makes sense? You know, and freshwater fish are the same way. Freshwater fish, a lot of times they'll move off the top of the ledge out over here in deeper water, but they'll be suspended in the depth of the top of the ledge. Okay?
Are you trying to get your bait down 60 feet? What do you say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's supposed to do.
that's why
Well,
he's using the weights.
You got to use those
weights.
big trolling ones.
Or a downrigger. You can use
Or
downriggers.
What about a planer?
Planers, I like planers if you get good ones that won't trip. You know what I'm saying? You know, you got to be a mechanic to run a planer board. You got to know just exactly how to bend that sucker, you know, and then next thing you know, it'll be running off. And some people bend them where they'll run off to the side. You know,
Do you lean, south or north when you head out the inlet?
you know,
Just if you're going out on habit, you know.
You don't, well, out of St. Lucie Inlet, I mean, if you've got a decent chart on your boat, you've got a Garmin or, you know, Simrad or, you know, the standard charts are gonna show you the, you know, where a lot of the you know, the structure is that's man-made. It's gonna show you the reef lines, the contours. 70 feet's the first reef out here, the 6 Mile reef. So you can go straight out and hit that reef. And then from there, you can go north or south. If you go south, you're going to come up to, you know, Loran Tower Ledge, and you know, you'll end up down around Jupiter. And north, there's more structure. I think there's more man-made structure up, you know, like wrecks and stuff like that to the northeast from our inlet. Molly Finn, and what's, you know, there's a whole list of them that are out in 120 to 180, 150, 180 feet of
the
water.
Halsey.
You know, all
all
of
that
those, you can
stuff.
go from wreck to wreck to wreck and look, and you find one that's got some bait on it. If you're using your fish finder, you know, fish around that. You know, if there's bait on it, there's a good chance there's other fish around it. So, you know, there's not, and the bait moves around. So, you know, if it's on the top, like Sam says, birds will be, you know, you'll see birds. You know, and that's a good sign wherever you are. So,
And one, you know, the first ledge is the 6 Mile, and it's about, like you say, 70 feet deep. And then you go on out a little bit further, about another 3 miles, then you got the 8 Mile. And it drops off to about 120. So, but in between those ledges and wrecks and stuff, don't quit fishing. Troll out there. You know, troll to them. Because a lot of times, excuse me, a lot of times those fish will be suspended either on the down tide side of that structure or the up tide side of that structure. You know what I'm saying? Like if this is a hump, they'll be up, in the current's running this way, sometimes they'll be up here, sometimes they'll be down here. And you got to explore all that. You know, it's fishing, guys. You see all this crap on TV. I shouldn't say crap, but those guys are trying to make a living. You see all this stuff on TV. It's not like that all the time. It's not like that all the time. Those guys have either had somebody put them on those fish, or they know where they're going.
or they spend an entire day or days to, you know, fish areas to find the fish. you know.
17 minutes of film is what it takes to make a 30-minute show.
Before you get too far away from his question.
Yes, sir.
I can't remember the name of the guy that does it, but the big laminated maps for each of the different.
Home
areas.
port charts.
There you go.
Home port charts.
Get home port chart, and then I plot my course right out of Fort Pierce Inlet, across each of the wrecks you're talking about, down to Push Button Hill, and then I'll plot
Yeah,
another course going back across stuff, back to the inlet home.
Those charts
That's-
have all of
They're
the,
really
you'll have all the artificial stuff. You can
You
go to
got Bethel, what is it,
Bethel Shoals.
Bethel Shoals, then you got Loch Loosa bank out there. Now, you got to be careful out there at Loch Loosa, because I know some boys that got caught bottom fishing out there the other day. And they
Yeah,
had
there is no fishing zones out here.
yeah, and they had red snapper on the boat too, so it didn't cost them much, just their boat.
I have a deep drop rod, and I've been stopped the last 3 times
Oh yeah.
coming in by Fishing Game
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that, you know, they want to see the fish box. So illegal nowadays, be real legal.
Yep.
Yeah,
2
those
times in a row.
those charts are great. There's other basic charts. Most of the charts that you get are going to have all of the structure that's been put out here. That's, you know, there's going to be a couple more for Pat Price eventually here. So it's nice to see him doing that, and you know, those, you can even go on the Martin County website.
Yeah.
If you go to Martin County website, they have a site on a page on their website that has all of the structure that they, as the county, has put out there in the coordinates. Now, some of it's older,
Depth, everything.
so some of it's older. You'll possibly get out to some of that stuff and say it's not here. Well,
Yeah.
it'll move over time. When the hurricanes come through and that stuff, some of that stuff does have the potential to move. So the stuff that's been out there for a real, unless it's concrete, you know, which doesn't really move, but you know, some of the other stuff has moved. Even the boats and stuff, they've moved a little bit,
Yeah,
broken up. You
The
know,
two charts that I have are what, like hotspot or something like that.
hotspot's more of an inshore chart.
Inshore chart.
Okay.
They're
Yeah.
good though for inshore.
Yes, sir.
There's a Navionics app that you can put on your phone for $20 a year that has everything on it, and on top of it, it has where you are on the map. when you have-
Right, the Navionics charts are really good. I do.
What did you want to ask, son?
What is the best way to use to catch kingfish?
The best bait to use to catch kingfish is live. I like live bait. I like live bait, but if you can't get live bait, a froze cigar minnow is really, really good. I don't think it's as good as live bait, but frozen cigar minnows, I like those. But you know it.
What about a big spoon?
Well, trolling a spoon, you can. It's hard to beat it,
Ribbon fish,
sir.
ribbon fish.
A ribbon fish. I've seen. You know, I've caught a few fish. I'm on Wilkinson's pro staff, and they sent me some of those things. They're about that long, and I've never really done that. I've done better on those storm plastic baits than I have those. But frozen cigar minnow, when you're out there drifting, is good. And if you want to get it down, you could put some, you know, put a 2-ounce egg sinker on your line above the swivel and get it down, and pay attention to your pay attention to the angle of your line going into the water, because that angle of that line is going to tell you how deep that bait is. You know what I'm saying? You understand? The angle of you want it, the scope, they call it the scope, like scoping your anchor, but the scope of that line will tell you how deep you are. And if you catch a fish, remember that angle of that line going into the water, or try to replicate it. That way, you got a chance of catching another one at that same depth. But frozen cigar minnows are my next choice. I mean, they got frozen mullet and they got frozen herring and all that kind of stuff. But I like frozen cigar minnows. And I don't know if any of y'all know where DeBrooks is. DeBrooks Bait and Tackle in Fort Pierce. They carry a lot of good fresh frozen baits, you know. And thing about frozen baits, when you're picking them out, if you see a bag of baits that's frozen and it's got blood all in there, don't buy that. The reason is that has been defrosted and frozen back. And those baits are soft and they come apart so easy. You know, it's very frustrating. Yeah.
You hooking that through the lips, or you rigging it, or what are you doing?
When I'm using my live bait, I hook it.
Frozen,
Yeah, the frozen baits. When I'm using frozen baits, I really like two trebles. And this is about a number 4 treble. That's what I like. About 4 inches apart. And I don't hook this into the bait, into the body of the bait. I let it swing free. You know, a lot of people will hook this tail bait into the bait. But I don't like doing that. I like to let it swing free back and forth.
It's
That way.
like a stinger bait.
Yeah, it's a stinger hook.
Do you have a wire connected to those two?
Oh
hooks?
yeah. It's no good if you don't, because they'll bite it in two. You know, if I'm, you know, if I was in a school, yes sir,
Where do you put the front one, through the mouth, through the eyes and mouth?
I turn that hook up. I know y'all can't see this, but I turn that hook up and put that right through his chin and leave these two down, and then I just like that. Y'all come up here and I'll show you that, but that's the way I've had the most success. And I tie those together with figure 8 knots so that I don't have a real big knot. You know, I hate big knots. You know, you take a 100-pound mono and tie a clinch knot. That thing looks huge. I don't like that. So I like that tieable wire. You know? Yes, sir. And when I'm fishing for kings, I'll use 20-pound. And when I'm fishing for like blackfin and wahoo and stuff like that, I go to 45. The 20-pound, you know, I'm most of the time on my conventional reels like this right here, I'm using 30-pound mono. So.
So when you go to the blackfin, you're using a trace of wire, you think for blackfin?
I don't.
Yeah.
You can, but it depends on the lure. I think one of the things we didn't really touch on is one of the things I like to do if you're out trolling, let's say you're going to drag some baits around, you didn't have live bait. You know, I'll have some rigged ballyhoo, and I'll have those on my outside lines, and I'll run, you know, like the small feathers, like a dragon eyes, or you know, something, you know, a small jet head or something like that, but a small one, way back. I mean, way back in the middle rod. I'll have a middle rod holder, and I'll run it way back. And you can have a heavier one to get down a little bit, but I think the blackfin is when they'll show up because they're a little spooky from the bait, you know, from the boat. But that's one way of getting them without specifically focusing on them and trying to, you know, basically spread out your options. You know, that's one thing that I like to do.
So you're mentioning paying attention to your line scope, so it sounds like you're closing the bail if you're having a spinning reel. Do you have any experience of the difference between that approach versus free lining? I'm finding more of my bites, kingfish, blackfin, the last one we caught, even dolphin, I'm catching them more when I'm free lining the line out. And
A live bait?
No, even using frozen.
I know exactly what you're saying.
And I mean, I feel I'm getting more actively fishing as opposed to throwing three frozen baits out, letting them sit there as you're drifting. As I'm actively fishing and letting it out as I'm getting the hits. As a dolphin, less dolphin, the same way.
All my spinning reels have bait feeders on them. And I use a spinning reel with a bait feeder. You know what that is?
I don't know.
That's where you hit the selector and it doesn't free spool it, but it's like very small amount of drag.
Like a Shimano bait fisher reel has got that feature on it. The pen
Now,
spin fishers
if
have
you don't have that,
live liners.
what you can do, you can do a couple of things. You can use a rubber band. Pardon me. You can use a rubber band to hold your line. You can't just let your line go slack. You know what I'm saying? You can't let your line just be slack out there. You got to have something to hold your line. So
I'm talking feeding it out where it's
feeding it out like that. Yeah.
You're still feeling the end of that.
correct.
Yeah.
Still knowing where that bait is. That's
Yeah.
not a bad way to do it. And then you obviously you don't want to let the whole line out.
I'm
But
just wondering if there's more natural presentation of it going through the water as opposed to kind of seeing
if you're letting it drift down, you know, yes, that would just be like look like a piece of bait that they're going to pick up as they're swimming by. So yeah, instead of just sitting there fluttering in the current, you know, with the bail closed, you know. But if you're drifting, let's just say you're not anchored, you're drifting, then that bait's going to drift with the boat. So you don't always have to do it. But I'm like you. I like to have my rod in my hand if I'm fishing, you know, at least one rod, and then I'll have a flat line or something or a live bait out or something like that. But I always like to have a rod in my hand. So I'm kind of the same way. I'll let it out and then reel it back in, let it out. But I always want to feel that bait on the end of the rod, whatever I'm using.
Well, when you're fishing live bait, when you're feeding it out like that, the bait has a lot more of a natural action. because he's swimming. But I
I'm just
try,
thinking more this wintertime, we've had a hard time getting live baits and trying to figure out how to go about it. This is the first year with the boat, so we're trying to figure out the best approaches.
Yeah.
Do things different when we, again, we aren't catching market that thread fins or,
mm-hmm.
live
What kind of boat you got?
Cobia 262,
How long is it?
26 feet.
Yeah, you'll be able to get out there and do some.
And we got out on Sunday, didn't Amberjack, Mr. Amberjack here.
How big amberjack?
They weren't big this weekend, 24, 22, 24.
That's a rod full for him.
Yeah.
Them things, they come born with running gear. Those amberjack reef donkeys. That's what we call them. Oh man, them things that hurt you. But it's a lot of it.
We had another question.
Yeah.
We have another question behind.
How far back were you trolling that, sea lion there, when you were
The feather I was talking about? Far back. I mean, when you think it's far enough, put it a little further. In other words, way behind the baits that you would have out if you're doing a regular trolling spray. It's out behind all the baits.
way back?
Where you can barely see it.
That's way back.
Pretty much.
Well,
And
you
then I'll
can
put the
barely
rod.
see
I'll
it.
put the rod on the T-top. If I got a rod holder up high, I'll put it on the high rod holder. Just make sure it's a decent enough size rod and the drag's not too tight that it ain't gonna go flying out of the back of the boat.
Or break the rod off.
Or break the handle.
Two of them. Broke 2 rods.
One thing that I have a 24-foot boat, and I have access to a 37-foot boat, and one thing I do is I like to stagger I'll put a long shot out the back, okay, like Tony's talking about, way out the back, and I made me a homemade outrigger that goes in my rocket launcher, and it's bent. It's a piece of conduit, and it's bent, and I got a piece of rubber radiator hose where it fits in my rocket launcher real good, and I've even got a quick release on it, and I'll put that out the back, and then I've got what I'll do is I've got 2 flat lines out to each side of my rocket launcher, which would be very similar to a kingfish rod holder on your bimini top. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And then I got 2 bottom rods that we're talking about the different weights. I got a 2-ounce weight on one and a 3-ounce weight on one. And that's gonna let them go different depths. And I got those pinned down with a quick release on my cleat, my pop-up cleat, where that way you don't get so tangled up, And if the wind's blowing, you might have to cut that back to 3 rods, and that's okay. If you can't fish with 3 rods, that's better than staying tangled up all the time. You know what I'm saying? So I like to vary my depths and vary my spread. Then when I catch one, I'm going to try to duplicate everything. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I know you guys are talking about trolling, we don't know what we're doing. Can you drift when you get to these wrecks? Can you hit live bait?
Absolutely.
Sure. That's my favorite technique. Yes, sir.
As long as
Yes,
guys
sir.
aren't out there with the trolling motors stuck on each of the spots.
You'll get out there and you'll see the guys out there with their either anchored or they'll be trolling. They'll have a trolling motor down and they'll be in stationary. You can maneuver around those guys, but you can always find somewhere else to fish too. And there's lots of structure out there, but I like to drift too, like Sam. That's one of my. I don't like to mess with the anchor, But if you're nowadays, everybody wants to put a trolling motor on the front of their boat, and that's a pretty good way of staying in one place. And guys can fit, target specific, structure on, at any depth, right? So, drifting's a great. You can do a lot of different stuff drifting. You can live bait, you can dead bait, you can bottom fish. You can bounce off the bottom. You can have a flat line out. You can do all.
Yes, sir.
With your trolling motor, you can control your drift.
Yes.
However you
Yes.
And you can keep it in a straight line, you can slow it down, speed it up.
Right.
So
If-
a trolling motor, I think
If you've got anything well, I can't say that because they're coming out, but I think they got
96.
96-inch shaft now on the trolling motor. I was working at Minn Kota. I worked there for 20 years. I was talking to an engineer one day, and I said, we need longer trolling motor shafts for Parkers, uh, for contenders, for Blue Wave. We need, well, we can't really do that. I said, why not? He said, because when you engage that trolling motor on a 101-pound thrust, it'll come back under and hit the boat. I said, son, I don't know which school you went to, but you need to write them people and get your damn money back. I said, because when that motor's pulling, it's pulling away from that boat, and the angle of the motor's going to be out here in front. And he didn't say much more after that. But anyway, and we're coming, Minn Kota's coming out with some new one. The best thing that ever happened to offshore fishing is that spot lock on those trolling motors. Holy cow, man. It makes it, because anytime you touch that anchor rope, it's misery. I don't care if you're letting it out or bringing it in. Yes, sir.
Question, when you were actually putting the lead and then trolling or drifting, how long was the leader that you actually used?
I like about a 72-inch leader, about a 6-foot leader behind the lead.
That's for frozen. If it's live, the same thing?
Sir?
If it's live, the same thing?
Live
Just
bait.
down or only on frozen?
You know, I like it, but both. I don't troll a lot of live bait. I drift live bait. You know,
That
I
was
drift.
really, he was talking about the longer weights to get the bait down when he was using, he was talking about the setup with like a paddle tail, like a big plastic bait.
Yeah, big plastic bait.
That's what he was doing.
Or also the frozen one, yeah, because I've been keeping them, I guess, too short. Obviously, now you're saying.
Well, frozen baits, yeah, I mean, you don't have to use a long skinny weight with frozen. You can just use a fish finder rig, you know, and however long. You just got to be careful when you're using frozen, because as you drop it down, you want to let it out slow, because it'll wrap.
It'll spin around the fish finder rig. You know, that's the one with the weight on the bottom. And then I like to use the 3-way swivel. I call them catfish rigs, you know. But the longer that leader is, when it's going down, it's, and next thing you know,
But
yeah,
if you let it out slow with the current as you're drifting, it'll keep from that. You know,
Yeah.
you can keep that from
if
happening.
I'm going to use that rig, I'm always throw my bait out first, and then lower it down. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, when I put my weight down, I throw the bait out first and let the bait get away from the boat. Then I'll let my lead down. That make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. That way, if you don't do that, she'll crochet around that line.
All right, we're gonna wrap up the Facebook.
Already?
Y'all can stay here. Well, 45 minutes. I mean, that's
Okay.
I'm gonna just close this out, and then y'all can stay.
Yeah.
We can stay and chat more. But I just want to say thanks to anybody that is out there watching us. Don't forget to come see us at SunDance. We're going to be at the boat show in Miami next week. We're getting new inventory in every day or every other day, it seems like. So don't be ashamed, don't be afraid to come in and see us. We've got a great team of guys here, sales team. We got Sam supporting our fishing side of things, and come by and see us. We're open 7 days a week. Thank you, Sam.
Oh, thank you, Tony. It's always a pleasure. And I appreciate y'all coming in.
Yep, thanks for